It was a sweltering day in August, in the plains of an Illinois grassland. I was walking back to our pit with my trowel in one hand and an empty bucket in the other. The sun was beating down on the parched earth, and I couldn't wait to get back under the shade of the tent. I passed the bucket to a team member, and I checked the paperwork to see what level I was going to have to measure to, as I was next to get into the pit and dig. A voice came from behind me over my shoulder, startling me a bit. "Amber, have you ever worked in CRM?" It was the dig lead, a short, blonde professor from Notre Dame. "No, I haven't," I said. Hello, and welcome to the Amber Talks podcast, speaking of the past. This is the first full episode of the show, so thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. Today I'm going to talk about what I do as an archaeologist, because I get a lot of questions from people, and even after answering them, most people still seem a little unclear as to what I do. The story I told at the opening of this episode is a true story of one of the first times I ever heard the term CRM. I'd seen it before online on a group for archaeologists, which I knew I wanted to be. I was in school to become one at the time, but I didn't understand what CRM was. Because mostly as you go through school, they're pushing you to continue on, either in your anthropology or academic archaeology. I do love both subjects, and I may continue into academic archaeology further, but mostly that's what people think of when you say you're an archaeologist. A lot of people just think archaeology means big, season-long digs in a strange exotic place with an ancient past that we're expanding our knowledge of. And once in a while in CRM archaeology we do that too. It's just less often that we can study more open topics that way. We aren't always working with an open-ended goal of learning more. We're also often tasked with making a judgment call about the historic sensitivity of a site and whether it should be preserved and protected from being disturbed. CRM stands for Cultural Resource Management. The resources can be cultural artifacts, historical sites, historic buildings, historic foundations or houses, and historical landscapes. In cultural resource management, we identify, assess, and then decide how to preserve these types of resources. All of those things including landscapes, buildings, and artifacts. So there's many levels of the job, and a lot of types of specialities involved. However, no, we're not paleontologists, and we're not looking for dinosaurs, although it would be awesome to find one, I think, for anyone. And no, we're not pirates, and we're not treasure hunters hunting for gold or swords or arrowheads. I often get asked, what's the best thing you've ever found in archaeology? Which is a difficult question to answer. I'm not looking for the best things. But if I have to look back over everything that I've ever excavated, to me, maybe the most important thing was skeletal remains of human beings. Because to me, that is as real as it gets when it comes to meeting the past and preserving our history. It was those people who made our history, and it is an honor to reveal and learn more about them. But most often, I don't find anything when I dig. And I think people end up puzzled as to what my job is about when I am digging for things I don't get to keep, which aren't even very valuable when I do find them, and most of the time I'm not finding anything anyway. But like I said, it's not a treasure hunt. To me, it's more of a process to understand the truth of what happened in any given location. Archaeology is basically studying the broken, discarded trash of history. But it's also about places, people, and stories. In CRM, we employ historians, historic building experts, GPR and non invasive remote sensing specialists, preservation specialists, faunal remains experts, university departments and professors, environmental workers and state and local historic departments, railroads and Department of Transportation. We work with soil scientists and lab specialists. We need crews of people writing for permissions and contracts to secure dig sites and survey areas. We need teams of people who can dig holes of those survey areas year-round in any terrain. We can write reports for a client on a piece of land we surveyed, or, similarly to academic archaeology, we can also write a paper for a conference about a culture or subject we've studied. Often, we're also monitoring development work and underground disturbances. I mean, for example, when they need to repair a sewer in a historic district, or if a big pipeline is going to cross the country through some historically active areas. Think Native American also on that one. So I might be digging in the backyard of a property, or on the side of a highway, or in the middle of a forest. I might be metal detecting or using GPR. I might be in a parking lot or a cemetery. I might be digging a 4-foot deep, 2-meter square unit with a partner 10 centimeter layers at a time and meticulously picking out every find. Or I might be standing in the middle of a road watching an excavator pull up mounds of asphalt from the road, revealing a layer cake of soil stratification that I need to record. Just within the first year of my CRM job alone, I have found shoe buckles from the right time on a hill where George Washington was encamped. I dug up an old silver coin from a military training ground. I excavated early redware, whiteware, creamware, milk glass, and marbles. I've uncovered the flakes and debitage of lithics from stone tool making sites. And I found beautiful bits of early transferware and stoneware, from speckly brown to deep glossy purple. But on my volunteer digs, I've bagged bones pulled from ancient graves. And I've seen Anglo-Saxon namestones rise from the ground. I've held in my lap the antlers from a cache that the Native Americans left behind. I've held their tobacco pipe. I wrapped up their turtle shell. The quills from their needle game. The tools left in with everything still usable. When a tool is still usable, we say it still has some life in it. These things were worth coming back for. It felt as close as you can get to holding hands with someone in history, as if they handed this object to you through the process of time. It is a responsibility to protect these types of resources when they are uncovered. So although I'm not living in Egypt and uncovering what is underneath the pyramids, I do still maintain an eye on the work in the US that excavates in case it disturbs anything archaeological. I'm always saying I don't love these big construction projects, but that is what part of sort of what makes me determined to do my due diligence and spot any archaeology before it gets lost to digging for some modern building. I can also find myself helping identify and record things in the lab during the winter months when the ground is frozen and the work is slow. And there are still times when I'm tasked with joining the field crew and we take shovels and screens and dig small holes in any given property to sample the area and get a general idea of what is under the ground there. It may be for development, but when we do that, it's usually smaller scale and more likely to yield results because we can get closer to the dirt and actually sieve through it, shovelful at a time. So while CRM isn't all encompassing for archaeology, and I might not get to study every fantastical site in the world, and I don't have maybe as lofty goals as some people expect for someone who says I'm an archaeologist. But we work with the gambit of players in the preservation world, the scientific world, and in many different circles. From historians to city planners, CRM keeps archaeology an active force in how we responsibly grow as a civilization. I asked around in my office today, and I asked them, what does CRM mean to you? And I think one of my youngest coworkers put it best. She said, it means uncovering stories of people that would likely be lost to development. Not always the big sites that make the news, but the small finds left from everyday lives. Thank you for listening. This has been Speaking of the Past by Amber Talks.